I'm happy to be standing here with a lot of friends seated down there. And I think this is my first talk in nearly 2 years I'm giving, so I'm really happy to see familiar faces. But I noticed from the guest list, Ingrid Munro is supposed to be here, but I just want to say something like she told me when I was 12 years old. And when MISA was getting started, I mobilized a group of youth, and I formed my own team. And we registered with MISA. But the thing that happened is when we registered, we were expecting MISA to provide all the solutions for us. MISA is Mathare Youth Sports Association. But that didn't happen, actually. And I remember Ingrid and Bob Munro pulling us aside and telling us, you do something, we do something. You do nothing, we do nothing. Because basically, it was not about handouts. It was about us fixing our communities. So I grew in Mathare. I grew up in Mathare. And almost 11 years ago, I moved to Kibera. And I co-founded Carolina for Kibera. But one of the things I found out in Kibera, when I moved into Kibera, there are very few NGOs located inside Kibera. At least I can say there were about 15 NGOs inside Kibera. Presently, you can actually say they haven't increased much. You can actually say there are about 20% NGOs in Kibera. Okay. At the moment, when you read literature, when you read a lot of academic papers, they actually say Kibera has about 534 NGOs. And you wonder, why do we have poverty? What are we actually doing? If we are actually going to map Kibera, can we actually map ourselves and actually figure out what are we actually doing? Because I think for me, it's one thing working with NGOs in Kibera, we are very immune to criticism. Okay. And one of the things is, in that process, I'm talking in the context of I being from Kibera, and in terms of what is the role of NGOs in terms of what we're doing. And if we actually want to improve the community, because we have very young, dynamic social entrepreneurs who actually, in this community, we have a lot of change makers, people who can actually have an impact in terms of solving a lot of the problems we have. I guess a lot of you know about Tabitha Clinic, and some of you have just visited Tabitha Clinic. Tabitha Clinic is actually a story about a lady, a widowed lady who died in 2004, and that clinic is actually a product of $26. $26 that she was given, and she invested that money with other women in the community, and she actually developed a clinic, which is now standing in Katwekera, providing free medical treatment to a population of 30,000 people with the support of CDC. Okay. And one of the things in terms of doing that, partnering with CDC, one unique element that actually came on board was how can we actually create employment for the community? Because it's extremely important for us working in the NGOs, in the civil society, in terms of we can actually have solutions, but if those solutions are not really owned by the community, there is nothing much we are doing. But actually by creating employment for the community, by actually creating job opportunities for the people from the community, they can actually own and sustain these solutions. We actually need to really examine our participatory approach in terms of what do we really say is participatory approach? Do we really involve the community in actually working out the problems they face? I'm happy to hear Melinda saying in terms of we need to map Kibera, but actually we also need to involve the community in that process of mapping, not actually the NGOs, because what we've actually been very well in doing is to actually be there to map it, but the community does not really know the boundaries. And that's what really happened in 2007 during the post-election violence. People did not really know where to go for services. Senye Clinic was open, Tabitha Clinic was open, a lot of institutions were open, but the fact that there exists very minimal partnership between NGOs within Kibera, then it becomes very challenging in terms of knowing what the other person is doing, and in terms of how do we partner? You know, how can we actually bring our heads together in terms of working with the different communities? And in that rivalry, we end up dividing the community more. So my message today is in terms of, let's leave here inspired and really figure out in terms of how can we partner? How can we work together? How can I know what you're doing? And how can you know what I'm doing? And really knowing the fact that there are so many people, there are a lot of social entrepreneurs in the communities, there are a lot of change makers in the community that are really willing to actually be provided that opportunity and to be involved in this work that we are all doing. Thank you very much.